Okay, so now we want to start from, thinking CAS as a way of thinking, as a mental model, how it described, how it started. What is a metaphor? A metaphor is really a comparison that shows how two things that are not alike in most ways, but are similar in another important ways. So like to give somebody the green light. We use green light as giving somebody a favor. So it's not related, but green lights means you can pass, you can go forward. So a metaphor is used to describe understanding and experiencing one kind of thing in terms of another. Is Metaphor is something is fundamental to our conceptual system. It's the way of you describe, you think things. Give you some of the examples. This one, because it facilitates the understanding of one conceptual domain, typically an abstract one like life, or theories, or ideas, through expressions that relate to another, more familiar conceptual domain, typically a more concrete ones like journey, or buildings, or food. That means you have lots of the way of thinking in your mind. They are very abstract. How can you make it things, for example, food for thought, trying to digest ideas, like give someone green lights. Theories like buildings, we establish a foundation for them, a framework, support them with strong arguments. Theory, that means you have a building, you have all those things, you have to strengthen them. And life as journey. We know some of us travel, hopefully others seem to have no direction. Many lost their way. It's using food to think about something like different domains, ideas, theories, or life. So a metaphor means you use two things, not similar in some ways, but similar in other ways, and trying to get those abstract ideas linked with some concrete things you understand. This is called a metaphor. CAS is a metaphor. So this is something we want to go to how to use CAS. And the other thing is about competence and capability. CAS requires to, this is dynamic nature, requires you to change your concept. For example, in today's complex world, we must educate for competence, the knowledge, skills, and attitude, to the capability, the ability to adapt to change, generate new knowledge, and continuously improve performance. We know the capabilities, certainty is low. Degree of agreement is low. So basically, in the past, we know we have the competence, we learn the skills, we know we can do it. But capabilities, while everything is changing, is dynamic, you have to adapt. It's more important to develop a capacity to adapt to this rapid changing environment. Give you one example. In the past, when people in their lifetime maybe only one or two jobs, you're trained in doing, you got a PhD, you think, gee, I can be a professor. So the competence means you learn the skill, the knowledge, you can, this is a lifetime. But nowadays, people change 10 jobs, right? They do different things. And they have to change really the rapid changing job market. They have to develop that kind of capacity to adapt to this kind of changing environment. You can't memorize things. Think, oh, gee, this is my skill, this is my expertise. This is concept. This is a metaphor. The concept really brings you how you view the world, how you adapt yourself, and the skills. Instead of learning, particular typical skill, you might have to learn a lot of skills to enable you to adapt to the changing environment. So this is something the CAS perspective is the way of thinking. And also, you think about the change and the variation. We oftentimes are desire to control the organizations as a machine. Even sometimes when I manage the school, I think, gee, and I got to control it. So we are tempted to conclude that variation is undesirable. However, variation is natural within any complex system when there is interaction between many different factors. You can resolve the conflict. In the past, we thought, gee, we could resolve the conflict in the organization. We can change it. We can try. We spend lots of time to solve the dispute. But nowadays, variation may not be maybe a driving force. This is why I started to pick up the complex adaptive system thinking. I view that's kind of a variation as a positive thing. So innovation, further, we talk about innovation. Actually, innovation itself is really by definition is variation outside the norm. You have to break the old rules. Otherwise, how can you innovate? So our strict call to eliminate our variation is simply an appeal to the machine metaphor. It's workable in this system. So that means variation is such a positive thing. Adaptation is the required capability. The other thing we think about resilience, we know the change dynamic. We have to think about how you make a system resilient and how can make ourselves resilient. The resilience means you have, some push into the system. You have the capability to bounce back. I first contact this concept is the Wenchuan earthquake. We talk about how community, when it was destroyed by the earthquake, how the community, bounce back to develop itself, to become resilient. Now we have this new earthquake. This is the feature. We have a team there in work, to introduce social resource. So I'm think about resilience, really the ability of a system to gracefully degrade and to quickly self-recover to a normal state. Because we know there are so many changes outside our environment or outside our own control. The system, how will really come back to the normal state. So the ability of a system to recover from all those pushes, threats, changes, either back to its original state or adjust to the new state. So the disturbance has to be absorbed by the system. And also the system is kind of ongoing change. The system itself can retain essentially the same function, structure, identity, and feedback. This is a dynamic nature about resilience. So I'm talking about the metaphor is the way you think, the capability, the resilience, how you're really trying to develop that kind of skill or capacity to make the system can absorb the changes and disturbance. Those are the metaphors you think about in your research. You think about in analyzing the issues. You think about designing interventions and also self-development. This is the mental model. The mental model is what is the best, what's the ideal, versus how this system interact, observe the disturbance, and try and achieve some kind of status, co-evolve toward the dimension we want. For example, in development, we want to see whether or not we can really co-evolve and facing the challenge, climate change, disasters, all the other things, trying to really achieve our development goals. For human system, how you divide to really meet the stated need. Even you have so many threats, so many changes. Economy can slow down, people can migrate. There are lots of, the epidemic we can control. We have to control it. So this is the way of the metaphor of thinking through all those systems. It gives you something you understand the nature of development, the nature of the system works, how it works, and also identify. One thing is identify the emergence. What is innovation, and how you scale it up, and also identify what kind of micro policies they may create a transition point for the system, change the gears, of the direct or change the directions. Those are the metaphors I think is very useful for CAS in doing the health policy analysis and health, to analyzing the process of health system development. So those are the courses we are going to, the context we are going to describe in our next session on how we apply this metaphor. In this session, we primarily introduce a system thinking and a complex adaptive system, the key features, and also as the way of thinking through those issues. Those will build our foundation of understanding the health system, health policies. But however, how you really develop that kind of skills is another thing. It requires a lot of learning, and maybe you have to do case studies to really apply it. I want to stress one more thing is we know the features. It doesn't mean you can, when you do analysis, you apply all the features. These are the features will help you to understand what is a complex adaptive system. So this morning session, we gave some kind of introduction about CAS, and there are some materials, the sources, described here, and will be uploaded in the Blackboard system. So our morning class will finish right now, and this afternoon we'll have more case studies and stories to tell. That's it, and we finish right now.